We were just kids, most of us right out of high school, and still wet behind the ears. The skipper, who we called the old man, was only 25. God, we had that plane way before any of us would have hoped to have a car. Officially, there were 10 of us on the crew, but really you have to count that plane as the 11th. That fort was much more than 17 tons of aluminum, glass, and rubber. She was our best girl, our wife, our mother, all rolled into one. Sure, we griped about the old girl, cussed her out, or said she wasn't fit for the boneyard. Even our songs about her weren't exactly love songs. But nobody else had better say anything bad about the fort. Those were fighting words, especially coming from a Liberator crew. By God, she was our fort, and we were damn proud of her.
A navigator sits in front, surrounded by his map. He belches in the intercom and wakes us from our nap. Praise the flying fortress and pray that she'll afford. We'd rather be at home than in the friggin' flying fort. A captain sits up on the left, he flies the fort with ease, but he hands it to the co-pilot when we're heading for the trees. Praise the flying fortress and pray that she'll afford. We'd rather be at home than in the friggin' flying fort. The midway gunner has to stand to give his guns a pull, but that's all right, 'cause in the fight his hands get mighty full. Rig the flying fortress and pray that she'll aboard. We'd rather be at home than in the friggin' flying fort. Then pity the foresail gunner, for his space is very sparse, and when the landing gear retracts, he gets it up the arse. Praise the flying fortress and pray that she'll afford. We'd rather be at home than in the friggin' flying fort. Well, the radio operator passed on the news report. He says that Congress just outlawed the friggin' flying fort. Hooray! Praise the flying fortress and pray that she'll afford. We'd rather be at home than in the friggin' flying fort.
I was awe-stricken, I guess. The thing is, it was so large, so immense, so beautiful, that that's about all. I don't know how else to explain it. It was a wonderful aircraft. And I was proud to work on them.
And my first impression was, wow, I love the looks of that airplane. I still do. I still think it's the most beautiful aircraft that the Air Force has ever had.
Well, the B-17 itself was a good airplane at that time. In fact, it was one of the best.
The B-17 carried 10 crew members. There was a pilot, a co-pilot, who rode up at the top and in front. Below them in front was the bombardier and a navigator. Behind the pilot and co-pilot was the engineer, who also manned the top turret with two 50 caliber machine guns. Then moving on back in the plane, we had two waist gunners that fired their guns through the open windows on the sides, which was very cold. We had a ball turret gunner underneath that could shoot below the plane and rotate in every direction. And then behind we had the tail gunner, kind of a lonesome spot at the back.
I've handled stick and marauder, and I've flown quite a lot in my time. I've had a good share of instructors, and some of them even were fine. A bow-legged sailor from Princeton, and one that was trained in Cornell, and a bugger from Brooks who gave me the hook, and others too many to tell. Now the fellow from Princeton was steady. He taught me to take off and land. He could settle her down for three-pointers and loop her while using one hand. But when I went up for my solo, and he said, keep her steady and trim, sure I landed the ship, but I busted my hip. I learned about flying from him.
Apparently, they needed heavy bombers. Well, one thing, and I'm 6'2", so I guess that kind of made it a little difficult to put me in a fighter plane.
I was selected, of course, for the ball turret because I was the smallest guy on the crew. I fit pretty nice and snug in that ball.
Of course, he said, who's this here guy by the name of Hoffman? Of course, shyly, I was sort of in the back of the group, and I held my hand. I says, well, I'm Hoffman. He said, momentarily, he said, you're a tail gunner.
Since I had experience as being a mechanic before I took my overseas training, I was assigned to the top turret gunner, engineer gunner, we were called.
Our flight crew arrived in England just the day before D-Day, and within 2 days we were assigned a mission.
This entailed being rolled out of bed early in the morning, about 4:30, where we would go down and have a big breakfast, and then we'd report over to the briefing room.
And at that time we would all be told where we were going to fly, what kind of weather we could expect, and the general purpose of the mission, period.
It was my responsibility to see that the aircraft was in good mechanical conditions and was all serviced before we take off, and I was in charge of all the enlisted men on the crew.
We carried extra ammunition, as much as we could pile on board and still get off with safely, because we were carrying a tremendous fuel load, and it was pretty tough on that old 17 getting all that weight off the ground. We went to our airplanes where we were flagged off one after another into the blue to join other groups forming up over England for a mass penetration over Germany.
Will you go home today? To Blue One yesterday. We haven't lost faith. If you fly a plane at all, you're too high in case you fall. Better just forget the plane. Take a boat or go by train. Will you go boom today? Will you go boom today? You blew up yesterday. We haven't lost faith.
First mission was to Munich, Germany. It was a long one, up to almost 12 hours. And it was exciting because of the first mission. We didn't want to get shot down on our first mission, as some had.
The first airplane I ever saw blow up was a B-17, right out in front of me.
It was very difficult. 2 pilots on it all the time, and in addition, we had to keep close contact with the other planes and flying type formation, and that was very, very difficult. We were tired before we even got to the mission.
That wing is like dragging a barn door through the air.
We were told to fly at 32,500 feet. The highest we can go was 29.5, and we looked up, and sure enough, they were the B-17s. They were up there at 32,000 feet.
And at 32,000 feet, we regularly experienced 55 to 65 below degree temperatures inside the aircraft.
The top turret gunner stood up all the time. He had just had 2 pedals that he could rest his feet on. And he just stood up in there, and the whole thing turned. You turned with it. As it turned, you could be shooting and raise your gun up in the air like that and move it around 360 degrees.
The only way you could get into the turret was to point the guns straight down, which rotated the turret. Then you unlocked the door, stepped into the turret, then you locked it from the inside and turned it on, and then you rotate the guns back up, and then you are locked into that thing until you decide to get out.
I didn't like the ball turret all that well. I loved the tail. I always felt it was the front row seat, the best seat in the house.
The aircraft, as you know, the axis or the center of the aircraft is about midway there on the wing in the center of the fuselage, and any little bubble in the nose section wasn't affected much, but the tail, the tail being farther back from the axis, I enjoyed that ride pretty well. I really did.
I didn't mind it at all. I had those 2 caliber 50s right up alongside of my head, and actually I think I had a feeling of being better protected down there with those 2 guns right so near me than those waist gunners and tail gunners did.
Little strap that fit underneath your rump sort of here like, and it sort of relaxed a little bit. You could sort of lean back on it a little bit and relax. I know when we got shot down that I had an awful time getting that thing on fastened. It probably only took me 3 seconds, but I thought it was about 3 or 4 minutes trying to get it on fastened.
Goes kind of fast, don't it?
The Me-163, when he attacked us, it was an airplane for another war. He was so fast. On most propeller-driven airplanes, we had about 20 seconds to fire on a propeller-driven airplane. When he tried to fire on a jet plane, that was cut down to about 5 seconds. I elevated my guns a little bit to get out to him. He was flying 20 millimeter, and he was further out. And then there was two P-51s came down from up high somewhere, and they took him out to the ground and shot him down.
By the time we arrived in England, the Air Force had pretty much controlled the sky because of the tremendous amount of support we got from the P-51s.
Our mission was to escort bombers, period. Our commander, General B.O. Davis, Jr., was very strict in this area. He said, don't leave the bombers. I think these were the last words before we left the ready room going to get in our airplanes to go on a mission. Don't leave the bombers, which we did not do.
We had the bomb bays open, and we were instructed not to let the bombs go because we missed the target, so we went around again, which is the worst thing you could do. Now everyone has their line on you. The flak is coming up pretty good, and we had to go around, which we did, and then we dropped the bombs, and off went everybody to home, except our plane was going to Russia. And the reason for that is that the ailerons up there, and when the bomb bays were open that long, they froze on us, and we couldn't turn the plane. So this was one of our first few missions, and I guess we got a little panicky and started yelling for Mayday. And three planes came right around us. These were the Red Tail boys, one on each wing and one above us. And they asked if we had a navigator aboard. And we said, we have a navigator aboard. He says, you in trouble? And we said, yes, we're in trouble. And he says, well, and we're in trouble too. And I said, why'd you ask about the navigator? He says, because we're lost. So I said, well, you should just stay with us and let us come down to a lower altitude. Maybe we can get control of this plane and we'll steer you home. And that's just about what happened. We got down to about 9,000 feet. The plane controls were back in our hands, and we just went down the Adriatic, and as soon as we got to the spot where these fellows recognized where they were, they gave us the tally-ho, and off they went. And God bless them, they took care of us that day.
Don't leave the bombers, which we did not do. And I believe this was the key to our success in not having a bomber shot down while we escorted.
Quite often it happened that by the time we got back to our home base, the weather would deteriorate to the point you have to separate and fly alone. Otherwise, you'd be running into each other. And at that time, it was up to the navigator to get the plane back to the home base. Now, unfortunately, the accuracy was only within plus or minus a mile generally. And we had to rely on our crew members to try to locate that particular base you were shooting for. So each of the crew members would be looking out the respective windows to see if they could locate a base.
So he flew over Tajon and the Tagu airstrip when the ceiling began to fall. The clouds closed down on the tops of the mountains. He couldn't see the ground at all. He flew through the rain, he flew through the snowstorm when the light began to fail. Then he spied a railroad going in his direction, and he said, better get there by rail. He flew down the valley and he dodged through the canyon, keeping that train in his sight, till the rails disappeared in a hole in the mountain. That was the end of his flight.
And on one occasion, I remember there was one pilot that was on his last mission. And as he approached his home base, this was it for him. He was going to go ahead and go home after this last mission. His aircraft collided with an aircraft that was making a run over its respective base. He's going in for landing. And I can still remember seeing down, looking at our base and seeing on the ground the burning of the aircraft. And we felt real bad about this, to the effect that all of us went to the officers' club after that and got ourselves dead drunk.
We had him come back with parts of the tail missing, chunks out of the fuselage, nose torn off. 2 engines, they had no trouble making the trip.
The crew wanted to get back to England and to safety, and they just continued to fly them the best way they could. the way it was built by the Boeing Aircraft Company certainly was probably one of its best features, or best known features, was the extensive damage that could occur to the tail sections, both vertical and horizontal, and still be able to fly the thing back.
We always had the tarmac always full of aircraft waiting to be worked on or modified or test flown. There was always a lot of activity. We had our cots there, and we'd keep working as long as we could. Then we'd take while somebody was working, we'd take a break and then go back and work again.
Biggest problem we had over there, I guess, was mud. Even just sitting out in the field, the planes would sink into the mud sometimes. With a little luck, you could drop the flaps and get all engines going and taxi them out. But very often we had to get Pletrax and tow them out.
See them marching in formation, see them lining up in grade. Every day a new vacation, that's the ground crew on parade. Who inspects the plane each morning, fills the empty tanks at night, checks the engines while he's yawning, polishes the landing light, watches as the engines rev up, hears the motors purr with pride, worries cause he can't remember, did he leave his tools inside? See them marching in formation, see them lining up in grade, every day a new vacation, that's the ground crew on parade.
And then patch that thing, put patches on the patches, and return it to the air. And that was the one we were assigned that day because our normal plane was down for maintenance. Heading back to England, flak opened up from the ground, fighters came in, and the first thing we knew, we had several engines on fire and we were on our way down. The order was given to bail out. And so we dropped our wheels, which in wartime and international understanding, that's the surrender condition. When you drop the wheels, all the flak stops and the fighters come in. And it's interesting about that because the fighters came right in as close as they could get, and the pilots saluted us as we headed down in flames. But eventually we all ended up in a prisoner of war camp where I stayed for 15 months. And that's another story.
I never knew there were so many planes.
And they're junking them. Boy, oh boy. What we could have done with those in 43. From the factory to the scrap heap. It's all good for now.
I used to work in one of those. Reviving old memories, huh? Yeah, or maybe getting some of them out of my system. Here we go. Lock 'em. Locked. Wheels up. Coming up. Sound like they're gonna run all right. Robbie? Yes, sir. Pilot to navigator. Go ahead. Monk. Monk, what's our course? Due east, skipper. That's right into the sunrise.
When I'm alone
when I'm dreaming after the long day's done, memories of past happy hours bring hope of new joys to come. Dreaming, dreaming of you in the firelight's glow, sweetheart, I want you to always know, each night I dream of you.
Stag party.
Our plane was Margie.
Miss Judy. Melvin's Moonshiners. That was our aircraft number.
The stormy weather.
Yeah. No name.
Scheming, scheming out plans for the future, dear, hoping to have and to hold you near. Partings will all be through.
What they call her, Marianne?
That's her, and she's the best ship in the outfit.
Ah.
And I want you to paint this name on the nose of your ship. Leper Colony. Because in it, you're going to get every deadbeat in the outfit.
There in our little love nest, I'll be happy with you. I adore. Let what comes after bring sweet baby laughter and tiny feet pattering the floor. Dreaming, dreaming of you all the long night through, counting the days till our schemes come true, sharing my dreams with you.
On the day that we got shot down, we were assigned Jack the Ripper.
B-17 I flew was the Memphis Belle. First B-17 had completed 25 missions over Europe in late 1942 and early 43.
There in our little love nest, I'll be happy with you. I adore you. Let what comes after bring sweet baby laughter and tiny feet pattering the floor. I'm dreaming, dreaming of you all the long night through, counting the days till our schemes come true, sharing my dreams with you.
From this time now on, never speak harsh words to your high-flying pilot. He may leave you and never return.